In this video, we're taking a look at the iconic AT&T Merlin telephone system. First released in 1983, it was targeted at small and medium businesses, and its various iterations lived well into the 2000s. We'll take a close look at several phones, the breadbox control units, get things all wired up for some inter-office calling, and finally hook up some Cisco gear to act as our homelab telecom provider to dial in and hear that famous Merlin ringtone. Let's get into it. Where to even begin? This is the AT&T Merlin telephone system, built for small and medium businesses. First released in 1983, it was intended to replace the 1A2 electrical mechanical key telephone system and correct several of its problems. First, I guess I'll try to describe what these things are even all about, what they're trying to do. So in a small and medium business, let's say you've got 15 employees, 10 of them need a phone, you could allow the phones to call one another. So I can pick this up and call Bob or whatever. He can pick it up, call someone else with some of the features that can be expanded here, which we'll go over. You could do conferencing and things like that. And of course, you can allow the phones to dial outside the office over telco lines. So you could choose one of the available lines and call, an outside number. Now, back to that 1A2. That was one of the predecessors to this Merlin stuff. And those things were around for a long time. I remember being in like the early 90s and at a receptionist in a doctor's office or whatever, you would still see these things. But they were quite old, weren't very flexible, not a lot of features, not modular. It was harder to add features later. And one of the biggest problems was cabling. You had to have one of these bad boys, a 50-line Amphenol cable. Well, this is an Amphenol connector, but 50-line Cat3, I guess is what this is. Yeah, Cat3 cable going to every phone in that system. And obviously that's a lot of wiring, and usually you'd have to have a professional do it. It was cumbersome to rearrange the lines and everything like that. So AT&T came out with the Merlin. This is sort of a hybrid type setup. You wouldn't really call it a PBX, but you'd have your telco lines coming in, and then all your internal lines here, voice terminals, they were called often. And you might notice the voice terminals use an RJ45 connector, not the traditional telephone connector here. RJ11, is that what that is? So these are not what I'll call normal telephones. They use RJ45 cables, and they use all 8 wires. 2 of the wires are specific data lines for programming the unit here, which we will get into from a telephone. 2 are for power, and then 4 are for 2 independent analog voice channels like a normal telephone might use. And it's pretty rudimentary. Every phone has this TP switch. Normal behavior is in the middle. I think T is like test. The phone kind of goes crazy, blinks all its lights. We'll try that later. But if you put it down into P, which stands for program, you could dial in specific key codes to program the system and talk back to the main control unit and program it. Now, the gear we have here is the Merlin Classic system, the original one that came out in 1983. When it came out in 1983, it was branded American Bell Merlin, and you can see these are called AT&T Merlin. One of the things that interests me the most in this Merlin stuff is the time in which it was born, 1983, when it comes to telecommunications history. The year after this stuff was made, AT&T, the Bell system, was divested into the so-called baby bells. I was a US West guy myself. So the first ones, 1983, American Bell Merlin, and then starting in 1984, AT&T produced all this stuff. More specifically, AT&T Information Systems. They produced that until 1996 when Lucent was spun off. And in fact, one of the phones I've got here has the Lucent logo on it. It says Lucent on the side there, even though it's clearly the same phone as this AT&T branded one here. So what this means is this is at least 1996 or newer, and this one is somewhere between 84 and 95, 96. In the year 2000, another spinoff, Avaya, took over from Lucent. And they produced Merlin systems. There were many iterations after this basic first one, but we're going to concern ourselves with the classic here. There was like the Merlin 2, Merlin Magics, tons of them. And they produced that until 2006, and they supported the Merlin line until 2014. Now, I don't want to admit how long ago 2014 is, but in the grand scheme of this phone coming out in 1983, not very long ago. Which brings me to another reason I'm interested in all this stuff. These were everywhere. Tons of these, at least in the United States here, were manufactured, and you would see them all over the place in almost any business, small business you went into. And they have a very distinctive ringtone. They've got this classic, sleek, like 1980s, trying to be futuristic look. They're manufactured very well. Let's talk about that. These early classic ones here, manufactured by Western Electric, AT&T's manufacturing branch that had been around for decades and decades and were pretty renowned for high quality equipment. And finally, of course, I like the name. I mean, Merlin? Come on. What an incredible name for a small and medium business phone system. I'll start by giving you an overview of the phones I've picked up, and then we'll start talking about these control modules in the back, and then we'll get to work and see if we can't get these things working at all. These are like the bread and butter of the Merlin classic world, I think. The model number is a 5B because you've got these 5 programmable buttons on the top, and some of mine have the original writing for what these buttons were doing for the business they came from. This one says Visa, MasterCard. This one says Discovery, so some sort of banking operation, but you can program these to do something. So I'll pretend this calls the Visa, MasterCard, I don't know, support line or something. So you can press this membrane button, we'll talk about that, and then dial out and pick up the phone and call whatever that is. This is an intercom type setup. Hopefully we'll be able to figure that out. And these were probably just internal extensions, so other phones plugged into the Merlin control box, and you know, call Bob, call Alice. Now I called this a membrane because it's like this matrix that detects where you're pressing, and that's how the button press takes place. And I think we could call these notorious. I think they started to wear out over time. It'll be interesting to see if mine work. These down here for drop, hold, you know, controlling the call, transferring it, are also membrane buttons. AT&T eventually decided those were not reliable over time and switched to actual, you know, physical push buttons in later models, I think. And I'm also happy to report some of the phones I've got came with the original metal stand. They kind of slot in here. Let's see if I can get this one out. It's pretty finicky to deal with these stands, I'm not going to lie to you. It's like a push button maybe. Come on! Well, you can see it. It's metal. I can't get it out. Super nice heavy metal so that the phone, and it's got little rubber bumpers, pads, so the phone doesn't really move around. You can, you know, really slam it on there. They later switched to plastic for cost savings, I'm sure. Still has the rubber bumper, still keeps the phone there pretty good, but obviously not as cool as a full metal piece there. And then I've got a pair of these 10 button deals. So the other ones had 5 programmable buttons. These have 10 total. These are called the HFAI 10, 10 for the buttons. HFAI, I think, stands for hands-free answer on intercom. So we got this button, HFAI button down here. So I guess maybe you can answer the phone without picking up and you'll hear who's talking out of that. We'll have to experiment with that. Oh, and these ones are not using the membrane. These are just little labels. You use the physical button to actually press it. And then the big dog. This is a BIS 22D, 22 programmable buttons. Maybe you'd have this at your reception desk or something. They're answering the calls and then forwarding them on to whoever needs to pick up inside the office. It's got a proper speakerphone. You can tell because of the speakerphone button. Then they added a nice little LCD thing here. I think it shows you the number you've dialed, the time as well. I'm sure that's fun to set. And this big one also has the full metal stand. That is sweet. And check out what just happened. That's what I was going to show you next anyway. So obviously each business is going to be a little different. And so for all the phones, you can either take this off entirely or slide paper underneath to write your own labels on. So this comes off, and this is like an original that has never been used. It's got the lines printed in there. So I'll probably take this one and trace it out to have a template for myself to make another one. So I don't have to write on this original one, just for preservation's sake, I suppose. And so this one just came loose when I unpacked it, but there's these little like plastic tabs all around it that you can kind of force them in there so it's not flipping around. Quick side note about how you're connecting these things. So of course you have the cable, plugs in right there. And on the back you have a line jack, an RJ45. I'll just be using Cat 6 cables. I think that's going to work just fine. On some models you have 2 jacks. You have the line, the one I was just showing you, that you plug into the control box. And then you've got this other jack. It's also an RJ45 connector. Remember, these are not like normal analog. Doesn't want to go in. Maybe that was a special, oh, it's a special cable. Look at that. Got a couple extra little bumps there compared to the RJ45 jack. At any rate, you plug this bad boy into the general purpose adapter, which lets you either plug an analog telephone in or something like a modem. And that's all the phones I picked up. Let's get these off the desk and we'll talk about the control boxes in the back. I picked up 3 of them. We've got a 206, a Model 410 and a Model 820. It can be a little overwhelming jumping into this Merlin stuff, but I found an excellent document written by a John Shelton back in 2003 when Merlin was still around. It sounds like from his intro he was a hobbyist and just likes the Merlin phone system, and he documents in detail what all this stuff is, all the different iterations of the phone. It's great. My 206 here doesn't have a faceplate. In fact, it came with this one, but it is not the correct faceplate. It's the right size, but it doesn't have the right mounting clips. So that was kind of disappointing because this is the one I want to get working. But these all come down. I think people called these bread box units for obvious reasons. And with regards to the model numbers, it's actually not too tricky to figure out. The first number is the number of outside telephone telco lines coming in. So I've got 2 in this one, the 206. The second number is the number of internal lines or voice terminals. 6, obviously. So 206 to drive the point home. On the Model 410, we've got 4 outside telco lines and 10 internal voice terminals. The Model 820, this is an 82338E. I don't actually know what that part stands for, but it has a capability. It's capable of 8 outside lines, 20 internal. This one has been configured for 4 and 10, so I didn't need to buy this one because I already have a 410. Wasn't really paying attention on eBay, but you can put modules in here to expand this up to your 20 lines and 8 outside telco lines. Imagine having 8 outside telco lines. What a world it was back then. Today we're going to concern ourselves with this 206 and try to get it working. I tried to get the 410 fired up in a Patreon video, and it basically just does nothing. No lights or anything. Let's just turn it on. Oh, nothing happens. So we're going to have some power supply fun to deal with here. I don't think it's any of these. These have to do with the phones. The seller I bought this from seems very reputable. It's been fully refurbished, guaranteed working. They even left me a voicemail letting me know they shipped it, and I could call them and ask any questions. So pretty high hopes for this guy. Plus, I don't even have enough phones to facilitate more than 6, let alone a Model 820. One of the technical advancements the Merlin system had over predecessors was modularity, the ability to add features as the business needed them, or maybe more realistically, as they were willing to pay for them. So you've probably noticed we have these 3 bays here. These just have some blanking plates in them, and they're labeled cartridge type 1, cartridge type 2, and 3. These each accept different types of modules to add capabilities. I've already got the feature package 1 card in here. This adds things like conferencing calls, and maybe the most pragmatic feature it adds is the ability to stop phones from dialing out. So imagine you have a phone like in your lobby and you only want to be able to connect with these internal phones with that one. If you don't have this feature package, they can just dial the outside world on your telco lines and make calls, and you wouldn't want that in 1983. So this enables the feature that you can stop a certain voice terminal from being allowed to access your telco lines, which is kind of cool. They also made the feature package 2, which I've got right here. Let me slot this one out for you. Here's feature package 1 that I just pulled out. Number 2 has everything this one does and a couple other things like speed dial. Cartridge type 2, which I don't have unfortunately, is an audio cartridge. So you could hook up an audio source to this and have music on hold. So while customers are waiting for your employees to pick up, you could play some hold music or whatever audio you wished. I think it had some other features as well. And then down at the bottom, we've got cartridge type 3, and this held the extra alert and 2 power failure lines cartridge, which I do have. Let's slot it in. So my understanding is when the power goes out, obviously your internal phones aren't going to work, but probably your telco lines are still working. It's one of the beauties of a old-fashioned POTS line. And you could plug in traditional analog phones here, and they can still talk to the lines. So I'm imagining A and B are matched up. So when the power goes out in your building, you have phones you can use to talk to the outside world, even when your hybrid digital system here doesn't have any power. It's also got this extra alert jack. I don't know what that's for, to be honest with you. I'll have to go look that up. Maybe you could plug in some alarm or something, I'm not sure. Speaker. The cartridges appear to be the same physical form factor, the same connector on the edge, but they clearly state which type they are, type 3, type 1, so I think they have to go in their designated type slot. That's pretty cool. Got the AT&T logo printed on the edge of the feature package 1 card here. Very nice. Basically all the gear we're looking at has these AT&T stickers with a serial number or a unit identifier or something, and Western Electric. I guess it's time to get this 206 powered up and see if we can get life out of it, or if this is going to digress into a repair video. Now, it's pretty interesting. The power is on the bottom for this one. It's not on the other units. And it's at this pretty tight angle. So obviously, that's not going to work. You got to get some of these 90-degree angle IEC cables. Picked up a couple on Amazon. And actually, I realized that for an entirely different reason when I was trying to power on this 820 here. Its power adapter is on the front, but you're also going to have some serious cabling problems if you've got a traditional style, because ideally everything is coming out the bottom of this front panel, I think, and yeah, that obviously not going to work. So I picked up a couple of these on Amazon. They're still readily available, but by coincidence or luck or not luck or whatever, the other two units that came later came with, I believe, the originals. They're both branded Electrocord, which sounds very 60s, 70s, and 80s to me, so I'm guessing these are the original cords. The other one from a totally different seller is identical. Oh, and while I have this back up here, let's talk about the case. So it's got these two plastic clips that the front panel rests on, and then you close it up. The 206 doesn't have those clips. It's got this odd cavity area here, so maybe that used to be part of the original panel, or maybe they broke, or maybe I'm dumb. I don't know. They're all the same size unit from the front. There's just no clips, so interesting. I guess I am seeing two guys here, so maybe they slotted in here and in here. Let me know if you use these. I can't stop noticing stuff. The oldest and smallest 206 has handles right here, which is pretty nice. You kind of lift it up. And they took those away in either later models or these bigger ones, or the ones with more capacity anyway. I think they're all the same physical size. These are pretty nice actually when you're just messing around, but obviously you're not going to move this thing around a whole lot in a production setting, so I can see why they decided that wasn't necessary. I've procrastinated enough. I'm nervous. I don't think there's any fans or anything on these things. It's got this nice little clip that is too small for this new cable. That's fine. We'll just guide that way out the back. It doesn't make any noise when it powers on, to my knowledge, so what we're really hoping for, I think, is a power light of some sort over here. I'm doing something wrong. This is exactly what the other one did. Nothing. I'm finding this very odd that two of them so far do nothing when I power them on. Do they need like a telco line coming in to decide they have work to do? I didn't read the manual, of course. Plug a phone in. Nothing, of course. What am I missing? I'm gonna go read the manual, I guess. Look at that bad boy down in there. Big 200 volt cap. 560 microfarad. I think maybe my cable doesn't reach all the way. It's got this kind of strain relief stuff, and I think it's getting in the way. Let's try one of those older cables. The good old Electrocord. And yeah, it fits nice in this little clip. Okay, round two. Will it run? There we go. Green. So yeah, I just can't use these new ones with this one. I think it'll work in that other one I was showing you. I still don't know anything about what I'm doing. Let's plug the phone in. It's ringing. Oh, it's in program mode. Okay. Listen to that. That is such a classic. I know you've heard that before. This is normal mode. Now I'm curious, I imagine it creates a dial tone without a telco line because these phones should be able to talk to each other. No. No dial tone. I do not know how to use this thing. Oh my god. Yeah, I don't hear anything. Let's put it in test mode. Yeah, see. Constantly rings, blinks all its lights. I think that means it's working. I'm going to go do some reading and learn how to program these and how to do an initial setup, because these phones are already programmed, for some other unit. They've got all these buttons that I doubt have been wiped. I don't even know if you can factory reset them or whatever. I'll be back. This is going to be a long night. I've been messing around, pulled the feature package out. I can kind of get it to do what I want. I never really get a dial tone on phone that's in the 0 spot. You put the phone in program mode on the 0th spot there, and that's how you administer. I'm pretty sure we're running into the membrane issue. On this one, the more modern Lucent one, I can pick this up and I can choose different buttons just fine, right? On this one and one other that I've tried, can't do anything. This one does give a dial tone. I think that's called like an intercom dial tone. That's what this would sound like. See, I can't do anything here. It's supposed to go away when you start dialing. This one has no dial tone at all for some reason, but I can dial, so listen to this. Right? I've done quite a bit of reading, and I can't really get this phone in what seems like admin mode, where you put it to program, and you're supposed to be able to pick it up, supposed to have a dial tone, which I don't. And then I'm supposed to be able to go *01 to get into this like mode where I can tell it stuff about the buttons it's supposed to have and stuff. I can't really tell if I'm making any difference whatsoever. But these are both already set up for the kind of 2-line configuration A and B. So it tells you what line it's going to use. I think this is intercom. We'll dive into that later. And lines A and B. Same here, intercom A, B. And you can kind of tell that's how they were labeled previously. This one was some 1641 number, 1642 number. So if I pick up, the red light is telling me what line I'm about to use. So if I pick up, I'm on that line. And you can see now on the other phone, that line is in use, and it's going to use line B if I pick up the phone and want to make a call. So I think what we're going to do is become a telecom provider real quick. Oh yeah, so I was going to show you how we're going to become our own telecom provider with this Cisco gear, which we will do. And then I learned a very critical piece of information. This thing automatically assigns the extension numbers based on the cable position. So this is extension 0, 1, and 2 respectively. So I can pick up, press the intercom button, dial 2, this one beeps, and you'll have to believe me, we have a connected call. And then I can dial back to 0 from here, so I can do intercom 0, I guess. That one beeps. So this is what an inter-office call sounds like. I'm speculating here that the feature packages let you do different ringtones and stuff. Maybe we'll have to look into that. And of course we can intercom to 2. Yes. Okay, it's working. We have a phone set up. A little anticlimactic, but there we are. I was reading that this fancy guy might even display its extension on its little screen. Let's get it in slot number 3 here, maybe. It's complaining about the time and date. Do we even dare? Alarm off. 12 p.m. Fine. All that's fine. You're good. It doesn't tell you. But this should be 3. Only like one of them actually has what I would call a dial tone. Not this one. Oh, okay. All the phone experts are screaming at me. It's configured to dial out. That's line A that we're going to create later. And you only get a dial tone when you select intercom. That's like the inner system. Isn't a very nice dial tone, but we should be able to dial 0 over here. And we can, of course. Okay. I think we're fully functional, at least in terms of interphone communication. Let me thoroughly explain how stupid I was being there. So, by default, they're configured when you pick it up to use line A. That's what this button is by default. If that one's busy, it'll use line B. Line A and B don't exist yet, right? We got to do the telecom provider funny business. So if I pick this up, I of course get no dial tone because that line doesn't exist. If you want to dial a phone internally, you press the intercom button and you do get, I guess you could call it a dial tone. It's like the intercom dial tone. And then of course you can like dial a phone. I think this one's 2. It is. So yeah, it's working just fine. And I kept saying, oh, there's no dial tone. Of course there's no dial tone. There's no line on that one. You got to go to a line that will provide you with dial tone. We got a little branch office on our hands here, boys. You don't complete your homelab journey without becoming your own POTS line provider. This is a Cisco 2600 router. I think it's from like late 90s. It's got some modular slots on the back, and we can install this, what's called an FXS card. It's got 4 phone line ports, RJ11 jacks there, and this can provide dial tone, just like your telecom provider would. We're going to be able to configure this where one line's going to port A on the 206, and when a call comes over that line, I can configure this thing to call a phone plugged in somewhere else. And I have enough here that we're actually going to be able to do 2 full lines, I think. Well, let's get this plugged into the machine, and I'll show you some brief configuration. We might have an issue. This 4-port deal I was showing you, it might be too new for this router, now that I'm thinking about it. I have a 2-porter, but that won't get us far enough to have an A and B fallback line, which I'd really like to try out. I could, of course, look this up online, but it's literally faster just to slap them in and fire up the router and see if it likes them. I'm really hoping it likes that 4-port. The worst case scenario, I've got other routers, so we'll get a 4-port something or other working. That one, just like that. You manage and configure these Cisco units over the serial console. This is what this cable is here over to my computer. Let's fire it up. I'm almost certain it's not going to like that card, but we'll see. This poor old girl takes quite a while to start up. And yeah, we already have a problem. It says WIC card has an unknown ID. I'm pretty sure maybe it doesn't even like either of them. Show diag? Let's take a look. Interesting. It doesn't even see the 2-port card, and it complains that it doesn't know what to do with the 4-port. Okay, let's go find another router. Got this big dog out. This is a Cisco 2911, quite a bit newer than that 2600, and it already has a 4-port FXS card in it, so I think it's going to get us where we need to be. I've been wondering where that was. I knew I had one more. It's been in the back of this thing on the shelf the whole time. So let's power this big guy up. It's up, and it's quite a bit louder, I might add. That's unfortunate. So we're going to do a show inventory. And yeah, right there at the top, it sees 4-port FXS card. That's good. The plan here is that we're going to configure this so that we can plug phones into these 2 ports on the left. We're going to assign those ports numbers. The far one will be 425.271 all 5s. The other one will be 425.271 and then some 6s. And then we'll be able to plug other phones or the Merlin into any of our 2 available ports on the right and be able to call those phones. That's the idea anyway. Okay, we'll get into something called privileged mode. We're going to get into global configuration mode, and we can configure these ports and assign numbers, essentially. We're going to set up something called a dial peer over voice, and you tag it with a number. I'll just call the first one 100, and you say POTS. Okay, so we're configuring something called a dial peer. This is how we assign a number to one of the ports, essentially. We'll say destination pattern. This is the number you'll dial to reach the port we're configuring. Let's do the far one first. To make this all work, you have to do this thing called direct inward dial. And then finally, which port should be rang when we dial that number? You'll have to trust me that this is port, let me look, 3. The far left one is port 3. Let's make another one. We'll call it 200 POTS. Give it a different destination pattern of, I think I said 6666. Okay, direct inward dial. And when someone calls this number, we want to direct it at this port, which is physically located at this unique identifier on the router. We're going to write that configuration in case I have to reset the router. That's all I'm doing now, just persisting everything we configured. If memory serves, that's all we should have to do. So I've got this phone plugged in on the far right. It should have a dial tone. It does. This one is plugged into 425.271.5555. And we're ringing. We have a phone call. Okay, let's do another test. This port was configured for the 6666 number. Let's dial that now. And we have a call. Okay, hopefully this is all making sense. This will be the 5 number. This will be the 6 number. And we're going to plug the Merlin in right here, meaning one of these Merlin phones can dial either of these, theoretically. The first hurdle will be, do the Merlins get dial tone when we give line A a telco line? Let's find out. Oh, it totally does. Oh, that is a really good sign. So what we're going to do is dial the 555. Oh, yeah. Yes, we have a call to the outside world over the Merlin. Let's try that one. I don't know, from another phone. Got dial tone. Ooh. Sorry, that one's really annoying. Okay. Let's do 2 phone calls. Get line B plugged in. I hope this isn't too bad to follow. Line A to the Merlin, line B to the Merlin. So it essentially has 2 phone lines coming from the telco provider. And these are our 2 telephones over here out in the world, even though they're on the same bench next to the Merlin. And of course, we will come over here, plug in line B. So by default, this is line A on all the phones, and you can see that's the one it's going to use. That's why it's red. So what I'm going to do is tell it to use line B, pick up, and hopefully we've got dial tone. So I'll say use line B when I pick up. Ooh, busy signal. That's interesting. Still have dial tone on that one. So what does that mean? I figured it out. I had some old configs that were actually changing some aspects of some of these ports. I just wipe those, and now the only voice port configs are the ones we just built together, the 2 dial peers. Let's try it again. So I'm going to say, use line B. Oh yeah, dial tone, dial one of the phones. It's ringing. Let's pick it up. So now we have an active call here on line B. Over here, it's telling us line B is in use. That's the active call right here that I've got off the hook. It's going to use line A. So when I pick it up, that should go green. We have a dial tone. Let's dial the other phone. It rang. We've got 2 calls going right now. So these 2 guys are having active phone conversations outside in the world, outside of our local Merlin setup over POTS lines over here. And I'm guessing I'll just get nothing or busy signal when I try to pick up one and I don't have enough lines. Let's see. Yeah, just... Oh, I can join the call. That's right. So just like a normal phone in your house, I'm on line A's call, line B's call. I guess you could call that conferencing. The next thing you're going to ask, logically, is can I call the Merlins from the outside? And the answer is, at this very second, no. So something about my setup, I can't actually make calls from the phones in these ports. They just give a busy signal. Probably a configuration issue, if I had to guess. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do about that. I guess for testing, I don't want to go too deep into that. I'm sure it's a solvable problem. I suppose I could put the Merlin in one of these and call it. Right? I'll show you what I'm saying. So let's put the Merlin there and then move this phone over here. We should have a dial tone now. We do. Let's call the Merlin. Just see what happens. Woo! They're all ringing. Everyone gets the ring. Pick it up. We have a call. Excellent. Okay. So I just have some config funny business or maybe some infrastructure limitations there. That is exciting. Let's get this all hooked back up with just like line A, very simple, and experiment with some of the feature packages. I've turned the Merlin off. You're not supposed to put these in or out with it on. Let's start with this extra alert power failure line card. So remember, my understanding is this just lets you plug in a couple analog phones, and in fact, we probably don't even need to turn the Merlin back on to see if this works. It's probably just bridging these lines. Let's try that out. Get a phone in here. Yeah, no surprise now that I'm thinking about it. It's working just fine. I have a dial tone. This guy's ringing. Okay. Well, we know that one works. With regards to the feature package modules, they obviously add features to the system, so you can do things like when someone dials this extension, actually forward it over to here or somewhere else, configure it so that certain phones like this one aren't allowed to dial out, some conferencing stuff, a pretty long list of stuff, and I'm not going to lie to you, it just doesn't seem that interesting to me to play around with. I know they work, as I'll show you, and that's kind of like good enough for me at this stage, so I apologize, but I'll show you some really low-hanging fruit showing that these do indeed add capabilities to the system, which would have been pretty impressive in 1983. So it's powered up with no feature packs inside, and I'm going to pull this phone down into program mode, and it's not in port 0. Nothing happens. Notice I'm pressing this red button. It's just beeping at me. Remember that. Nothing taking place in program mode. Got the unit powered off. Remember, I think that's important. Don't want to risk that. Let's put feature package 1 in, and we'll power her back up. And now we're going to pull the switch down into program mode, and it's ringing at us. That's normal behavior while in program mode. It'll just sort of continually ring. And notice when I press these buttons, I get behavior, a blink, and then nothing. No light means this phone won't ring when that line is calling it. Let's turn it off for both of them. Put it back in normal mode. So already with the feature package, some capabilities have been introduced. You can't program individual stations outside of port 0 without it, and now there's some level of configuration you can perform on each phone. And let's fire the old telecom provider back up. It's pretty loud. That thing's fired back up and is in the mode where I can call in to the Merlins. And I've got them all unplugged except the one that I've configured to not ring, because otherwise you can't tell which one's ringing. And we're going to dial in. So you can see, it's blinking, it has a call, but we told it not to ring anymore. So we can pick up the call, of course. Maybe it's that one. Yeah, there we go. So now we've got a call, but this one no longer rings because of the features introduced by Feature Package 1. Show you one more thing. Remember, the big guy's got the speakerphone, so we can dial, I think he's number 3, and he's picked up right away. Kind of gives you an idea for the audio quality. Pretty good for 1983, I suppose. They kind of just work. This system would have been such a boon in the 80s to a small business owner who would be able to basically set it up themselves. Right out of the box, I really like this. It assigns all the extensions and it just works. You can start using it right away the moment you plug your cables in. I, of course, really like these phones, the distinctive ringtone. These were everywhere. I'm sure lots of folks will recognize them, and it'll bring all sorts of flashbacks to doctors' offices and businesses sitting there waiting while the receptionist was taking calls. And I'm sure a lot of folks even had them right on their desk and used them until the VoIP stuff took over. Not really sure where I'm going to take it from here. I've got 3 of the control units, some more to explore there, but they basically all kind of do the same thing. Maybe I'll integrate it into the retro rack. I'm not really sure. There's some telecom stuff going on in there. But at any rate, I'm thrilled with how just kind of smooth this went. It was really fun to play with these phones. It's really fun to dial between them. Again, there's a ton more features that I didn't even touch on. Full-blown conferencing, not just joining the line and stuff like that, configuring the buttons and all that. So maybe we'll see this in a future video. Let me know if you have interest or have some ideas for what I might do with these things in the future. Wanted to throw it out there that I'll be at VCF Southwest this coming Saturday, June 21st, 2025. So if you see me, definitely say hello. I think that wraps it up for this one. If you'd really like to support the channel, the best thing you can do is subscribe if you haven't already. I've also got a Patreon where I post behind the scenes type videos. In fact, I covered this Merlin stuff just a little bit when I unboxed one of the first control units. And the $5 and up Patreon tier gets you access to the Serial Port Discord where I hang out quite a bit. As always, I hope you enjoyed this. If you made it this far, thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully, I see you at VCF Southwest.